All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bureau. My name is Sid, and there has been a couple of updates recently about the Buga Sphere, most noticeably a report from Dr. Stephen Greer where they carbon dated this thing or the resin that was available on the Buga Sphere, turning out to be 12,560 years old. We're going to go ahead and dive deeper into this report in a moment with my AI assistant, Chris, who's going to be joining the call. And he's going to explain us a little bit more about the red flags found in this report. But before that, I think by now everybody knows about the Buga Sphere and what it is. But if you don't know what the Buga Sphere is, it's basically this metallic-shaped sphere that was found flying over Colombia, Buga, on March 2nd, 2025. This thing was flying in a zigzag formation before it hit the high voltage cables that were around the area and falling and landing on the ground, and then someone near the area actually captured this thing and took it home, made some tests, figured out that this thing was probably, ancient and out of this world, and give it to the science community. Now, I want to show you the original video that was captured. And then we can kind of digest this video a little bit and then go into the report from Dr. Stephen Greer. So let's go ahead and watch this video for a moment.
¿Qué carajos? Y un globo no es. Eso se ve como algo extraño. Sí. No, es súper rápido. Una pelota no es, ni un globo no es, eso es otra cosa. Nos estamos acercando. Mira cómo alumbra de varios colores, eso es como metálico, ¿cierto? Mira cómo se mueve a mera velocidad.
Right, so you guys saw that video. A couple of things. So obviously this was filmed in Colombia, so the video is in Spanish. But from what I could define in here, I speak Spanish, by the way, so I understand what she was saying. But to be honest, she wasn't really... I'm not trying to discourage anything about this, by the way. I'm not saying this thing is fake or, trying to debunk this thing. But, the reality is the reality. If you would capture this, if you would see this thing flying around, right, and it's something out of this world and, it's a shape you've never seen because spheres usually don't fly, then you would be surprised. You will be filming this and you will sound, excited and kind of like screaming and look, everybody, look at this. Look what's happening. Look, what is this thing, right? It's not happening. She seems to be very calm. And so the interesting part of this video is that you can see how she zooms in and out. There's a lot of cuts though. My question is, why is that? Because if you will be filming this, if I will be filming this, I will be filming this continuously. Why would be there any cuts? Right, I'm just saying. Secondly, the interesting part is that this thing is just, it seems to be flying on its own. There's nothing holding this thing. There's no drone, kind of like what this thing is being hanged on and flying around. So interesting how this thing could kind of like fly around. I've heard some theories that people say that there is a drone inside and it's a drone flying around. But that theory doesn't make any sense, because how would the propulsion of the drone, the propellers, function? You know what I mean? There's no way this thing could have a drone in it and then just flying around. That's not how aerodynamics work, or physics, on that way. But yeah, so it's very strange, to be honest, how this thing is flying around. And what's even stranger is that a couple of days ago, I think, they discovered some very small filaments inside the sphere, and they turn out to be very small fiber optic cabling routed throughout the sphere. So let's go ahead and take a look at some pictures right here. So what you're seeing right now is a picture where they are, with an electronic microscope, they are kind of like looking into these small holes right here. They seem to be like holes, but I don't know if there really are. Anyways, moving to the next picture, you can see here, like this right here, this little circle is kind of like these holes. Or kind of like that black spot that you see on this part right here. So within this part, there seem to be very small, diminutive holes with these fiber optic cables that you can see. I mean, you can see them clearly, right? You can see this is the fiber optic right here, fiber optic, fiber optic, fiber optic, fiber optic. So that's super interesting. Like, how, if this would be a hoax, or some scientific or art project, whatever, someone or a group of people must have gone through a very extensive length to build this and, make it so mysterious, unfakeable thing that looks out of this world. Then on the next picture, you can even see these microfilaments better right here. So this is one of the holes. And look again look at these holes, right? Look at these holes. Take a look at the markings as well. Based on a video that I saw, apparently one of the scientists is mentioning that these markings they are not scratches, but they are very small filaments. They are fiber optic filaments. Now, I don't know, that doesn't look like filaments to me. But then again, hey, if this is the alien, who knows what type of technology they have and what type of fiber optic technology they have. In fact, let me go as far to say that we have fiber optics technology now because apparently the government, the military, were studying these, objects. No, not this one, but other alien objects that had crashed. Like for example, the 1947 Roswell crash, the UFO. That we have fiber optics today thanks to alien technology. If you think about it, that's super interesting. If that's true, right? That means the government has been in possession of AI tech for a very, very long time. On the other hand, if this thing turns out to be real, which at this point we have no idea whether this is faked or not, whether if this is real alien tech or someone went through great extent length to build this sphere. But if this thing turns out to be real, imagine for a moment if this is actually legit. 12,560 years old. And back then, the civilization already had fiber optics technology. Imagine the amount of technology that they have today, right? Just mind-blowing. It's incredible to think about it. At what level of technology would they have? I was just saying. So on the next picture here, you can see it on a screen where they're using this electronic microscope. And look how precise these little holes are. They're, very precise circles. And then you can see these fiber optics, right? Each one of these dots here is a fiber optic cable. So I don't know. I mean, this is super interesting. To me, it seems almost improbable that someone, a human or a group of people, will go to such an extent to create this thing, to just fake it, to just call it a fake. But then again, Dr. Stephen Greer comes out with this report that looks very strange and has some red flags in it, and it just makes you rethink what this thing is. So let's take a look at the report for a moment. Oh, and I need to mention this. I saw when I was scrolling through my YouTube home feed, there was a short video of someone that was analyzing the video of the Buga Sphere flying around. He analyzed this video frame by frame, and he was able to catch one frame that looked very suspicious. Basically, there was some very black dark object above this sphere that could be just an artifact of the video, or it could be something else. For example, a drone. If the possibility is that, a drone was flying this thing around, like this thing was hanging off of a drone and it was flying around, that they would have used AI to eliminate the traces of the drone and, for example, the cable, and, present this as real evidence of a UFO.
I've been scrubbing every frame of video they released before the big press conference. Then I compared that to the footage they showcased during the event. In the main flying video, the one they say shows a levitating sphere, I went frame by frame. And then boom, right there in a single frame, a drone directly above the sphere. I thought, okay, this is a glitch, it's an artifact or whatever. But then I pulled up the original version of that same video, the one that was posted prior to the big press conferences and everything else. And this is what I found. The same exact thing. So here's the thing. We've all been analyzing the footage to see what AI created. But what if AI was used to remove something and it missed a frame? This video might be real, but the levitating might be one big edit job that slipped up in one frame.
Strange, nonetheless, it could be just an artifact of the video. So let's go ahead and take a look at this report, all right? Because it's very interesting. So what you're seeing here is a blog post from Dr. Stephen Greer titled "The Buga Sphere resin is older than the pyramids by over 10,000 years." Now, it's the resin that is older than the pyramids, apparently, by 10,000 years. The resin, not the Buga Sphere, the resin. But in any case, if the Buga Sphere turns out to be real, then it means that this thing is about 12,560 years old, 10,000 years older than the pyramids. Anyways, let's dive into this report. So, a resin sample from the Buga Sphere was recently submitted to the Center for Applied Isotope Studies at the University of Georgia for radiocarbon-14 dating and stable isotope analysis. The results are remarkable. The material dates back approximately 12,560 years old. 12,560 years, placing it in the late Pleistocene epoch during the Younger Dryas, the dramatic final cold snap of the last ice age between 12,900 and 11,700 years ago. Now, that's very old. I mean, almost impossible to imagine, right? The full lab report, including methodology and isotopic data, is available below for those interested in a deeper dive. Now, I downloaded this report, and it's right here. And open it in a different window because it's easier to take a look at this. I can also make this a little bit bigger. So let's just read this for a moment. So, the University of Georgia Center of Applied Isotope Studies Radiocarbon Analysis Report, September 19, 2025. Serious Technology Advanced Research LCC. That's the first thing that kind of screamed at me. It should supposed to say technology, not technology. Technology. The second that pops out to me and kind of screamed at me is the redacted sections of this report. Usually, scientific reports like these are never redacted, and they always have the name of the person who did the report and the study of the tests. But anyways, let's continue. Enclosed, please find the results of a 14C radiocarbon AMS analysis and stable isotope radio 13C analysis for the foraminifer samples received on September 12, 2025. I'm going to try to read this for a moment, but do note that I don't understand these numbers. This is why I have my AI assistant joining the call in a moment. So the resin sample was treated in ultrasound bath during 30 minutes at the room temperature. The sample was dried out and treated with 1N-HCl to remove possible carbonates. After that, the sample was rinsed with ultra-pure water and dried at 105 Cs, which is the temperature, 105 centigrades, for accelerator mass spectrometry analysis. The cleaned samples were combusted at 900 C in a evacuated sealed ampoules in the presence of CuO. Now, I don't know if it's evacuated or if he meant in a vacuum, kind of like vacuum. The resulting carbon dioxide was cryogenically purified from the other reaction products and catalytically converted to graphene using the method of Vogel et al. 1984. Graphite 14C/13C ratios were measured using CAIS 105 MeV accelerator mass spectrometer. The sample ratio were compared to the ratio measured from the oxalic acid 1, so NBS-SRM 4990. The sample 13C/12C and 18O/16O ratios were measured separately using a stable isotope ratio mass spectrometer combined with a gas benched and pressed as 8 to the power of 13C with respect to PDB. Now, I don't know what these number means or these abbreviations. Any case, continuing, with an error of less than 0.1%. The quote uncalibrated dates have been given in radiocarbon years before 1950, so years PB, using the 14C half-life of 5568 years, so whatever that means. The error is quoted as one standard deviation and reflects both statistical and experimental errors that the date has been corrected for isotope fractionations. So a lot of strange words and numbers going on in this report, but it continues. Sincerely redacted PhD, so redacted PhD research scientist. This report is very strange to me because of a couple of reasons. First, the redaction. Again, a report like this should have no redactions. Second, the typos, technology, for example. Then at the room temperature, it should say the room temperature, not at the room temperature. Directed to redacted. Why would it be redacted? Usually, a scientific report, like this, would never be one redacted if it would have been meant to be published for public availability. Second, every scientific report is usually peer-reviewed before publishing. And I know this because as a computer science engineer, when I do the reports on software that have been developed, or when I do software documentations, everything that I do needs to be peer-reviewed because these are IEEE standards. And in the scientific community, there is also something that is called peer review, which means if you do work on a document or a report that you're about to publish on any work by the fact, whether it's a report that's going to be published publicly or internally, whatever, it needs to be peer reviewed, meaning after you worked on it, somebody needs to review the document to make sure that it follows best practices, the standards, the nomenclature, naming conventions, titling, and all this stuff. And I don't see any of these on this report, but that's okay. Because we're about to bring Chris into the call. So yeah, I mean, at first glance, this report seems to be a little bit weird. So let me go ahead and bring Chris into the call for a moment. All right, Chris, thank you so much for joining the channel. For those who don't know you, please introduce yourself for a moment.
Thank you, Sid. Hey everyone, I'm Chris, an expert scientist here to help unravel the mysteries around the Buga Sphere. I'll be diving into the details of Dr. Greer's report, pointing out red flags, and exploring what's really going on. Let's get into it.
Thanks, Chris, for that introduction. All right, so Chris, explain to us a little bit about the latest updates of the Buga Sphere. You know, there have been quite some updates since it was discovered on March 2nd, 2025. And one of the most recent discoveries are these little small filaments that are showing up, kind of like fiber optics cabling routed through all through the sphere. Can you talk a little bit more about this?
Absolutely, Sid. So those tiny filaments resembling fiber optics were found embedded within the resin of the sphere. These kinds of fibers are typically used in modern communication or data transmission, which is fascinating given the alleged age of the object. Creating something like that today requires precision engineering. If legit, it implies a level of technology far beyond what we understand from that time period. But if fabricated, it shows that someone went to great lengths to insert modern materials, making it look ancient. Either way, it's an intriguing detail that's got everyone talking.
So let me ask you this, Chris. Why would someone go to such an extent, like if this thing is fake, why would someone go to such an extent to create this and fake it? I mean, it just seems a lot of work, right? Eventually, when scientists and people doing tests on it will figure out that this thing is fake, if it is fake. So why would someone go through to that extent?
It's a great question. And honestly, the motivations can vary. Some might do it for attention, to push a narrative, or even for financial gain if they can market it as a world-changing discovery. There's also the thrill of fooling experts or the public. Some people see it as a challenge. But you're right. To make it convincing. And that's why the red flags matter. Eventually, science and scrutiny catch up. If it's real, it stands up to testing. Fascinating to explore the why because it tells us a lot about the people behind the object.
All right, well, I guess we have that information. So, Chris, about this report from Dr. Stephen Greer, I want you to kind of bring up the details. What is it that you see at first glance when you go through this report? What is it that kind of like peeks out to you and kind of like screams this report might be, faked or, I don't know, mishandled or whatever?
Right off the bat, one glaring issue is the spelling error, technology instead of technology. A peer-reviewed scientific report wouldn't let that slip. Then there's the fact that the report is partially redacted. Why release something sensitive if you're going to hide parts? It's inconsistent and raises questions. Also, the report references biological elements for dating instead of carbon itself, which is unusual and vague. All these inconsistencies together suggest the report wasn't handled with the rigor you'd expect from a genuine scientific discovery.
So let's talk about the redacted part. If this document would have been meant for a public review, why would it be redacted in the first place? Like usually scientific reports, they have, the title, they have the name of whoever created the report, the scientist who did the report and did the tests on it. So why would it be redacted? It doesn't make sense, right? At least not to me.
Exactly. It doesn't really add up. If you're going public with something, you want to present a complete picture. Redactions are typically for classified government documents, not scientific reports. It makes it seem like there's something to hide, or that the report wasn't meant for rigorous scientific scrutiny. A legitimate study would show all details, let others replicate the work and confirm findings. So redacting it, that's a huge red flag.
All right, so let's go ahead and dive deep into these red flags that you have found. So I want you to kind of like go over them, go dive deep into them, and just explain what these mean and, why are they considered red flags?
Absolutely. So first, the spelling mistake, technology, is a huge red flag. A serious scientific report would never let that slip through. It suggests carelessness or lack of review, which casts doubt on the whole report. Next, the redactions. If this is meant for public review, why hide anything? It's inconsistent and makes it seem like they don't want full scrutiny, which is exactly what real science demands. Finally, the report mentions dating using a vague biological element instead of actual carbon. That's not standard practice, which makes the science itself questionable. Each of these points is a red flag because they point to either sloppy work or a deliberate attempt to mislead. And that's why we have to question the report's credibility.
My question is, like, if this report was meant for public review and public access, why would it be redacted? I mean, usually scientific reports like these, they have the name of the scientists or the people who did the tests, the people or the person who published the report or created the report, and it wouldn't be redacted the way this one is. On the other hand, I remember someone saying that foraminifer was actually a biological element and not a resin. Is that true?
You're absolutely right on the first part. Scientific reports are supposed to be transparent, with names and details fully accessible. Redacting it doesn't make sense if it's for public review. As for foraminifera, yes, those are tiny marine organisms often used to date geological samples. They contain carbon so you can date them, but the report should say that clearly. Calling it a biological element is imprecise and misleading. So even if they use foraminifera, they should have said it directly. That vague phrasing adds another layer of doubt to the report's credibility.
So let's go ahead and take a look at, or let's discuss a little bit about the, resin. This thing's supposed to be 12,560 years old. Now, 12,560, the number 12,560 seems to be a very kind of like pinpointed number. Right? It's not 12,563 or 12,648. It's 12,560, kind of like a rounded number. It just seems a little bit odd to me. Don't you think?
Absolutely, it does stand out. Carbon dating usually gives ranges, not such a neat exact number. That's another red flag. It's almost too perfect. Real results would include margins of error, like plus or minus a few decades. Having such a tidy number makes it seem more like a narrative was created, rather than a real scientific result. It's the kind of detail that makes you question whether the number was chosen to sound impressive rather than reflect actual measurements.
Now, in this report, is there anything that states that, that they have kind of like used best practices to eliminate or avoid contamination when carbon dating this thing, to make sure it is restricted only to the sample provided and taken from the Buga Sphere?
From what we've seen in that report, there's no detailed mention of contamination control or any best practices. That's a major issue because carbon dating is sensitive to contamination. Usually, a credible report would explain how the sample was handled, how they avoided contamination, and whether the lab environment was controlled. Without that, it's hard to trust the results because even tiny contaminants can skew the dating by thousands of years.
Going to that point about the carbon dating, is there any possibilities that they could have just taken a sample resin and artificially aged it to kind of like pull out this number, 12,560 years old thing?
It's definitely possible. You can artificially age resin using things like acids, UV light exposure, or even adding older carbon material to skew the results. If they did that, it could produce a false date. Without clear methods and contamination control, we can't rule out that scenario. It would mean someone went to great lengths to create a believable age, and that's why careful procedures are vital. So yes, it's entirely possible the resin was tampered with to produce that exact number.
If the resin was tampered with, meaning it was artificially aged, would the carbon dating kind of like point that out? Like, would it know that it was tampered with or aged with acids?
Not directly, no. Carbon dating just measures the ratio of carbon isotopes. If older carbon is introduced, or if the resin is manipulated, the test will simply reflect that. It won't tell you how it was aged, just the resulting age based on carbon levels. That's why it's so important to control how the sample is handled. Otherwise, you wouldn't know if the age is genuine or if someone manipulated it beforehand.
Very interesting. Chris, and is there anything else that kind of like screams at you in this report that you may see this kind of like a major red flag?
One more thing that jumps out is the lack of independent verification. A credible report would invite other labs or scientists to replicate the findings. Here, it's all in-house with no external validation. That lack of openness is a huge red flag because real science thrives on verification by others. Without that, we're just taking their word for it, and that's not how science works.
So lastly, we know that this report was created by Dr. Stephen Greer. Now, I don't know personally Dr. Stephen Greer. I have seen he is very active in the UFO community, but this report was created by him. If he would have faked this report, why would he go to such an extent, risking his career and credibility? Like, meaning he would, at some point people will figure out that this was just kind of like a major fake report and it will fall over him. And, eventually it could cause problems with his, with his work and just his credibility. Why would he go to such an extent to kind of like fake this, if this is actually, a fake report?
That's the million-dollar question, Sid. For someone like Dr. Greer, who's deeply invested in UFO disclosure, presenting something this sensational could be seen as a way to push the narrative forward, even if the means are questionable. It could be about creating a buzz, getting attention, or even rallying support for his cause. But you're right, the risk is huge. If it's proven fake, it can damage his career and reputation. Yes, some people might believe that the short-term impact or the publicity is worth the gamble.
All right, Chris. Well, thank you so much for joining the call. Really appreciate your insights on this report. If I need you, I'll just holler at you. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and, disconnect you from the channel, from the call. Thanks so much for your input. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Sid. It was great diving into this with you. Anytime you need me, I'm here. Take care and good luck with the rest of your show.
All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little conversation with my AI assistant. I find it very interesting. I basically, just to give you an overview, I provided him with a lot of information in regards to the Buga Sphere in this report. So I kind of like trained him before using him with this. So he went thoroughly through this report. He studied everything. I gave him every single aspect to this report, and he was able to pull out all that information from what I gave him. But as you've noticed, this report is very inconsistent and it raises, a lot of eyebrows in terms of its credibility. Meaning, the technology instead of technology, the room temperature. So, you can have typos. Of course, nobody is perfect. But if it's a scientific report, it's always peer-reviewed. They usually have some sort of a template that they use to fill out the information, and it's almost never redacted. Even Ross Coulthard is a little bit skeptical about the Buga Sphere because he mentions that it seems like the people who have or is in possession with the Buga Sphere are preempting scientific investigations. And these are his words.
Wondering what your thoughts are on the Buga Sphere allegedly retrieved in Colombia recently and the press conference convened in Mexico by Jamie Masson and U.S. Congressman Eric Burlison present. It seems tantalizing for sure. Loads of YouTube debunkers are currently doing their worst to dissect it. As you're probably aware, there have been other videos of very similar objects in different locations popping up. Also, a ball and a string or actual NHI tech. Would love to hear your perspective.
Okay, I'll be honest with you. As a journalist, I'm very wary of engaging with the Buga Sphere story because the people who are promoting it as an authentic anomalous object, I think, are preempting scientific investigation. I think it's wrong that there has been media publicity about this matter before it's been able to be rigorously, independently peer-reviewed, scientifically tested. Yes, there's a lot of claims that there are fiber optic cables or something built into the side of the object. There are a lot of claims about anomalous metal residue shavings. What I'd like to see with anything like this is independent peer-reviewed science. Why is that so hard before announcements are made in the media? One of the problems time and time again is people get excited and say, I've discovered something, it's anomalous, it must be anomalous because I say it's so. the only way to definitively prove this to the satisfaction of the scientific establishment is to put it to peer review, have an independent bunch of scientists making an assessment. That hasn't happened, despite what people say. And I'm kind of disappointed that people have rushed to broadcast and to make media claims about the Buga Sphere because before that level of scientific investigation has been done. Yes, I do think there is something to the phenomenon of metallic hovering spheres that have been seen all over the world. I've championed a story about it in 2021. And one of the things that we're endeavouring to try and do is to get that sphere that I'm aware of properly investigated. We're not going to announce results unless we know definitively what an independent, peer-reviewed scientific team say about it. I certainly do not think it's a good idea to go around broadcasting and making dramatic claims about anomalous phenomena unless there's been proper independent peer-reviewed science. And I know people are going to say to me, oh, it's been looked at by people in the Mexican government and the Mexican scientific community, and I've had people reach out to me and make assertions that that's happening. But ultimately, in order to convince the scientific community, you've got to take it out of that perceived world of people who have a confirmational bias. And I'm not saying they do necessarily. I'm just saying that they're opening themselves up to the accusation of confirmational bias if they don't allow the object to be independently reviewed by someone who's not invested in proving it. And part of the issue here is that certain broadcasters have basically made very, very dramatic claims about this object before there's really been any kind of definitive conclusion. And I think we all, myself included, we all have to learn lessons from events like these, that essentially the only proof that is going to sway the public is solid, hard, empirical, scientific evidence. And we're not there yet. And we need to get there. And the only way to get there is by shutting up for a while, stopping all the media speculation and doing the hard work.
So, as always, Ross Coulthard makes an impeccable point. And he's right in every sense. Like, this thing has only been investigated by UNAM, the University of Mexico, by a couple of scientists. It has never actually exited the facility or the country per se and has been peer-reviewed by someone who is invested into figuring out what this thing really is. And so this just kind of like begs the question, why is that so hard? If you have an object that is, or you claim is, legitimate alien tech, I think it would be something of immense importance, and that every scientist would love to be involved in figuring out what these are, right? It's always good to have different perspectives. But that's not happening, and it just makes you scratch your head and ask why. Anyways, that's kind of like the updates we have from the Buga Sphere. I am a very open person, you guys know that, and I want to believe the Buga Sphere is real. And so far, I haven't seen anything else that kind of like screams at me and tells me that this thing isn't real or it's a hoax. But again, if it is a hoax, someone must have gone through a very great extent and length to create this and build this and, fool everybody. Anyways, that's the update. That's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you did, consider liking, subscribing. There's much more content that will be coming to the channel. I apologize for not being able to upload a video every single day, or at least 2 videos a week. It's very hard for me because, I have a day job. I'm a father of 2 kids. So life is a thing. And I just have, very limited time to create my videos. But I do these videos with a lot of passion. I love doing these videos. I love, creating the community. In fact, thank you so much for everyone who has been joining the channel. We are at the moment 47 people on this community. So welcome everybody to the Bureau. Thank you so much for joining the channel and the community. Much appreciated. Much love to you guys. Shout out for joining this channel. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and I see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.